Captain Taman stood on the bridge of his ship, the Teguk, watching the stars through the large window. His crew had been traveling for 3 months, looking for old alien ruins. The ship was not big, but it was fast and had good equipment for their work. "Captain, we found something," said Hieri from her station. She was the team's expert on alien life. Her eyes were wide with excitement as she looked at her screens. "There's a structure ahead. It's very old." Taman walked over to look at her data. The object was huge, floating in empty space like a metal mountain. It was covered in strange symbols that glowed with a soft blue light. "How old do you think it is?" "Maybe 50,000 years or more," Hieri answered. "I've never seen anything like this before." Do-yun, the ship's engineer, looked up from his work. "The power readings are strange. This thing is still active after all this time." Whatever built it knew how to make things last. Nari, who handled all communications, was trying to scan the object. "I'm getting signals from inside. Very weak, but they're there. Should we go closer?" Taman thought for a moment. Finding old alien technology was their job, but this felt different. The object was much older than anything humans had found before. "Take us closer, but slowly. Keep all weapons ready just in case." The Teguk moved toward the ancient structure. As they got closer, they could see it was covered in holes and damage from space debris. But the blue light still glowed and the signals got stronger. "Captain," Nari said, her voice shaking a little, "the signals are getting clearer. I think it's trying to talk to us." "Can you understand it?" "Not yet, but the computer is working on it." "Wait. I'm getting something." She put the sound through the ship's speakers. Strange music filled the bridge, beautiful but sad. Then came words in a language none of them knew. Hieri was reading her instruments quickly. "The genetic scanners are going crazy. This thing is scanning us too. It's looking at our DNA." Suddenly, the music stopped. The alien voice spoke again, but this time in perfect human language. "Greetings, children of Terra. We have waited so long for your return." Everyone on the bridge went silent. Taman felt his heart beating fast. "Return? What does that mean?" The voice continued. "You do not remember, do you? The great sacrifice, the terrible choice. But your blood remembers. Your genes carry the truth." Do-hyun checked his screens. "Captain, the structure is powering up. Energy levels are rising fast." "We are the beacon of memory," the voice said. "Built by your ancestors before the great forgetting. We will tell the galaxy that humanity has awakened once more." Before Taman could respond, a bright light shot out from the structure. It flew faster than anything they had ever seen, heading toward the center of the galaxy. "What just happened?" Taman asked. Nari was working hard at her station. "It sent a message, a very powerful one. The whole galaxy probably heard it." Hieri looked worried. "Captain, according to these readings, we just triggered something big, really big." The next few days passed slowly. The crew studied the beacon, but it would not talk to them again. They found strange symbols on its surface that looked almost familiar, like something from a half-remembered dream. Then the ships came. Nari saw them first on her long-range scanners. "Captain, we have company. A lot of company." The fleet that appeared was massive. Hundreds of ships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They were sleek and deadly with weapons that could destroy planets. "They're trying to talk to us," Nari said. "Put them through." A new voice filled the bridge, cold and harsh. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. I am Admiral Krethvar of the Velkari Empire. You have committed a crime against the galaxy by awakening that beacon." Taman stepped forward. "Admiral, we are peaceful explorers. We meant no harm." "Peaceful?" The alien laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "You dare claim to be peaceful? Your kind nearly destroyed everything 50,000 years ago. The galaxy still bears the scars of your violence. I don't understand. Humans have never been to this part of space before." "Lies!" Krethvar shouted. "We have the records. We have the proof. Your species was the greatest threat the galaxy ever faced. You killed billions before you vanished. Now you return, pretending to be innocent." Yeri whispered to Taman. Captain, the genetic scans from the beacon. What if they're right? What if humans were here before? Admiral Krethvar continued. You will come with us to face judgment. The Galactic Council will decide what to do with your kind. Resist, and we will destroy you where you float. Taman looked at his small crew. They were scientists, not fighters. The alien fleet could destroy them easily. We will come peacefully, but I promise you, we know nothing about this past you speak of. Perhaps not, Krethvar said. But ignorance does not erase guilt. Your ancestors' crimes cannot be forgotten even if you have forgotten them yourselves. As the alien ship surrounded the Teguk, Taman wondered what his people had done so long ago. The beacon had called them children of Terra and spoken of sacrifice and choice. What terrible secret was hidden in humanity's past? Do-Yun quietly showed him readings from the beacon. Captain, look at this. The genetic pattern it scanned from us, it's not just human DNA. There's something else mixed in, something I've never seen before. What kind of something? I don't know. But whatever. It is, it's not natural. Someone changed us, Captain, changed us a long time ago. As the alien fleet began to move toward the center of the galaxy, taking the small human ship with them, Taman stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there was the truth about humanity's past, a truth so terrible that it had shaken the entire galaxy. The beacon's words echoed in his mind. Your blood remembers. Your genes carry the truth. Soon, he thought, they would all learn what that truth was. He just hoped humanity could survive the discovery. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Ji-Won had ever seen. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it, and the walls curved in a perfect circle around hundreds of seats. Each seat held a different alien species, all staring down at her and Seokjin as they stood in the center. Ji-Won was Earth's best diplomat, but she had never dealt with anything like this. Beside her, Seokjin clutched his datapad tightly. As humanity's top historian, he had studied every record they could find about their species, but none of it had prepared him for this moment. Humans of Terra, spoke a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. You stand before the Galactic Council accused of crimes against all life. How do you answer? Ji-Won stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. Honored Council, we are peaceful people. We know nothing of these crimes you speak of. Our records show no history of traveling beyond our own solar system until recently. A wave of angry sounds came from the alien delegates. One creature, tall and covered in blue scales, stood up. Lies. I am Velthara, of the Zentauri Republic. My people still sing songs of the Terran devastation. Your kind burned worlds and enslaved entire species. Another alien, this one looking like a giant insect, clicked its mandibles. The hive remembers. Humans took our breeding worlds. Millions of our young died because of your wars. Seokjin spoke up, his voice shaking. Please, show us this evidence. Our history books say nothing about any of this. Admiral Krethvar, who had brought them here, activated a large hologram in the center of the chamber. Images filled the air above them, and Ji-Won gasped at what she saw. The first image showed a planet covered in black glass. This was Kepler 442b, Krethvar said. A Zentauri colony world with 8 billion inhabitants. Human weapons turned the entire surface to glass in a single day. More images appeared. Destroyed space stations, burnt cities, mass graves filled with alien bodies. In each image there were signs of human technology, weapons with Earth's energy signatures, ships with human design patterns. This cannot be real, Ji-Won whispered. Velthara's eyes glowed with anger. Real? My grandmother survived the attack on New Centauri Prime. She told me how human soldiers moved like demons, immune to our weapons, killing everything that moved. The hologram changed again. This time it showed genetic data, complex chains of DNA that Seokjin recognized but could not understand. Genetic analysis proves it, said a new voice. This came from a creature that looked like a floating brain, with tentacles. The humans who stand before us today are identical to the monsters of the past. Same DNA, same genetic markers, same potential for violence. But that's impossible, Seokjin said. If we are the same species, where are our records? Where are our weapons? Where is our technology? The floating brain creature pulsed with light. Perhaps you hid them. Perhaps this innocence is another trick, like the ones your ancestors used to gain our trust before betraying us. Jiwon felt desperate. Please test us, scan our minds. You will see we are telling the truth, we remember none of this. Memory can be erased, Admiral Krethvar said coldly. But DNA does not lie. You are the same species that brought terror to the galaxy, the same species that vanished without explanation 50,000 years ago, leaving us to wonder when you would return to finish what you started. The chamber filled with angry voices as different species shared their stories of ancient human attacks. Jiwon listened in horror as they described battles that seemed impossible. Humans who could survive in the vacuum of space. Human weapons that could crack planets. Human ships that moved faster than anything physics should allow. None of this makes sense, she whispered to Seokjin. Humans cannot do these things. Seokjin was studying the genetic data that still floated above them. Jiwon, look at this. Look at the DNA patterns. There are sections here that I do not recognize. Genes that should not exist in human biology. Before she could respond, Velthara spoke again. The worst part was not the killing. It was the randomness. Human fleets would appear without warning, destroy everything in a system, then vanish. No demands, no negotiations, no attempts at peace. Just death. And then, said Admiral Krethvar, 50,000 years ago it all stopped. Every human ship, every human base, every human soldier simply disappeared overnight. We thought you were finally dead. We hoped you were dead. An old alien with 4 arms and gray skin slowly stood up. I am Elder Tomax of the Archive Guild. We have spent thousands of years studying the Terran devastation. The evidence is clear, but there are things that do not make sense. What do you mean? Jiwon asked. The attacks always followed a pattern. Humans would arrive at systems that had already been infected by something else, something we could never identify. After the humans destroyed everything, these infections would disappear too. Another delegate interrupted. What does it matter? They killed our people. But Elder Tomax continued. All of our records from that time have gaps, large sections of data that were somehow erased or corrupted. It is as if something wanted us to forget certain details about what really happened. Seokjin's eyes widened. The beacon said something about forgetting, about a great sacrifice and a terrible choice. What beacon? Velthara demanded. Admiral Krethvar activated another hologram, showing the ancient structure they had found. This is what the humans activated. It sent a signal across the galaxy announcing their return. Elder Tomax studied the image carefully. Fascinating. The design is clearly human, but it uses technology far beyond what they possessed during the war. How did primitive humans build something so advanced? Maybe we were not primitive, Seokjin said quietly. Maybe something happened to us. Something that made us forget who we were. The chamber erupted in angry voices again. Many delegates wanted to destroy humanity before they could become dangerous again. Others wanted to study them to learn their secrets. A few, like Elder Tomax, wanted to investigate the missing pieces of history. Finally, the council leader called for silence. The evidence is clear. The humans before us are the same species that terrorize the galaxy. But there are questions that need answers. How did they lose their technology? Why did they disappear? And most importantly, what guarantee do we have that they will not remember their violent ways? Jiwon looked around the chamber at all the angry faces staring down at her. Honored council, whatever our ancestors did, we are not them. We seek only peace and knowledge. Let us prove to you that humanity has changed. Changed? Admiral Krethvar laughed harshly. Monsters do not change. They only hide until they are ready to strike again. But Elder Tomax spoke up once more. Perhaps they deserve a chance to prove their intentions, under careful watch, of course. And perhaps in learning about them, We will finally understand what really happened 50,000 years ago. The debate continued for hours. Jiwan and Seokjin stood in the center, surrounded by the weight of crimes they could not remember and a history they did not understand. Somewhere in humanity's past was a terrible secret, and now the galaxy was demanding answers they did not have. The planet Kythera was a dead world spinning slowly in the darkness of space. No life had existed there for 50,000 years, yet as the expedition ship approached, Minho could see massive structures covering the surface like gray scars. "Those are cities," whispered Soyeon, staring at her geological scanners. "Entire cities built underground. The surface buildings are just the top parts." Minho nodded, studying the images on his screen. As the team's head archaeologist, he had explored many ancient ruins, but nothing like this. The cities stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, their metal spires reaching toward the sky like the bones of some giant creature. "The council was right," said Admiral Krethvar over the communication system. "This was the human capital world. From here, your ancestors planned their attacks across the galaxy." Beside the human ship, 3 alien vessels waited. The Galactic Council had agreed to this joint expedition, but they were watching everything carefully. Too carefully, Minho thought. They expected humans to reveal their evil nature at any moment. "Take us down to the main city," Minho ordered the pilot, the one with the largest spire. As their ship descended through Kythera's thin atmosphere, the size of the ruins became clear. The main city was larger than any human settlement that existed today. Its buildings were made of strange metal that still gleamed despite 50,000 years of neglect. "Look at the architecture," Soyeon said with wonder. "The way the buildings flow together like they grew instead of being built. This technology is beyond anything we have now." They landed near the central spire, a tower that rose 3 kilometers into the sky. As the expedition team stepped out of their ships, Minho felt something strange. The air here felt heavy, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Elder Tomax, who had insisted on joining the expedition, moved slowly across the landing area. His forearms held different scanning devices. "Remarkable. The quantum signatures here are unlike anything in our databases." Velthara, representing the Diwa Centauri, was less impressed. "Of course they are different. Humans always used technology that made no sense. Weapons that broke the laws of physics, ships that moved through impossible dimensions." The team entered the central spire through a doorway that seemed to recognize their presence and opened automatically. Inside, everything was dark except for thin lines of blue light that ran along the walls like veins. "The building is still powered," Soyeon observed. "After all this time, something is still running." They followed the light patterns deeper into the spire. The corridors were wide and tall, designed for beings much larger than normal humans. But Minho noticed something else. There were scratches on the walls, deep gouges in the metal that looked like claw marks. "There was fighting here," he said, running his hand along the damaged walls. "A lot of fighting." As they went deeper, they found rooms filled with strange equipment, massive computers that still hummed with power, laboratories with devices that none of them could identify, and everywhere the signs of battle. Burn marks, broken machinery, and in some rooms, stains on the floor that might once have been blood. "This does not look like the home of conquerors," Elder Tomax said quietly. "This looks like a fortress under siege." Velthara dismissed his observation. Perhaps they were fighting each other. Evil beings often turn on their own kind. But Minho was beginning to see a pattern. The damage was not random. It all flowed in one direction, as if something had been pushing deeper into the building, trying to reach the center. "Follow me," he said, leading the team toward the heart of the spire. At the center, they found a massive chamber filled with screens and control panels. But what caught everyone's attention was the holographic display floating in the middle of the room. It showed a map of the galaxy, with thousands of red dots scattered across it. "What are those markers?" Soyeon asked. As if responding to her question, the room suddenly came alive. Lights blazed, screens activated, and a voice spoke in perfect human language. "Welcome, descendants of humanity. You have come seeking truth. Are you prepared to face it? Who are you? Minho asked. I am the archive, the final record of what truly happened, built by your ancestors to preserve the truth that the galaxy has forgotten. Images began appearing on the screens around them. Not the destroyed cities and burnt worlds they had seen before, but something else. Space battles where human ships were protecting alien colonies, not attacking them. Human soldiers fighting beside aliens against a common enemy. This is impossible, Velthara said. Our records clearly show humans as the aggressors. Your records are incomplete, the archive replied. They show only the aftermath, not the cause. Watch and see what your ancestors died to protect you from. The holographic display changed, showing a new image that made everyone in the room step backward in fear. It was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. Black and shapeless, it seemed to be made of living shadow. But worse than its appearance was the effect it had on everything around it. Where it touched, matter simply ceased to exist. Indadi, HFY, the archive said. Devourers of reality. They came from the spaces between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. They could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped by conventional means. More images showed entire star systems going dark as the shadow creatures spread through them. Planets simply vanishing as if they had never existed. Billions of beings dying not from weapons or war, but from being erased from reality itself. Other species could not fight them, the archive continued. Void-high infection spread through biological contact. One touch would turn any living being into another shadow creature. Only humans proved immune to their influence. Soyon gasped. That's why the genetic patterns looked strange. Humans were modified somehow, weren't they? Your ancestors did what had to be done. They changed themselves, becoming living weapons against an enemy that could not be defeated any other way. But the transformation came at a terrible price. The screens now showed human soldiers who looked more like monsters than people. Their bodies were covered in strange armor that seemed to be part of their skin. Their eyes glowed with unnatural light. They moved in ways that no normal human could move. The modification made them immune to void-high infection, but it also made them appear terrifying to other species. When humans fought the shadow creatures, the other races saw only monsters. Fighting monsters. Elder Tomac studied the images carefully. This explains the inconsistencies in our records. We remember humans as destroyers because we could not see what they were destroying. But why don't we remember any of this? Minho asked. Why does humanity have no record of this war? The archive paused before answering. Because of the final choice. The terrible choice your ancestors made to save everyone. New images appeared, showing humans gathered in this very room. Two figures stood at the center, a man in military armor and a woman in a scientist's coat. General Young-ho and Dr. Yun-ha, the archive said. They led humanity's final strike against the Void-High, but victory required a weapon that would erase the shadow creatures completely from reality. To do this, they had to erase all memory of them as well. That's impossible, Velthara protested. Not impossible. Quantum memory erasure on a galactic scale. Remove all traces of the Void-High from history, and they would truly cease to exist. But the process could not distinguish between memories of the enemy and memories of those who fought them. Minho felt cold understanding wash over him. They erased themselves from history to make sure the Void-High could never return. More than that, the archive said sadly. The quantum backlash from the weapon sent humanity backward through time, depositing them on their original world with no memory of their advanced civilization. They became refugees in their own past, forced to start over as primitives. The room fell silent as everyone processed this revelation. Humanity had not been monsters. They had been heroes. Heroes who sacrificed everything, including their own legacy, to save a galaxy that would never remember their sacrifice. But even as this truth sank in, alarms began ringing throughout the chamber. The archive's voice became urgent. Warning. Void-High quantum signatures detected. The erasure is failing. After 50,000 years, they are beginning to return. The archive chamber hummed with power as holographic displays showed the final days of the ancient war. Minho and his team watched in stunned silence as the true story of humanity's sacrifice unfolded before them. "Show us everything," Elder Tomax said, his forearms working to record every detail. "We need to understand exactly what happened." The central display changed, focusing on two figures standing in this very room 50,000 years ago. General Young-Ho was tall and broad, his body covered in the strange bio-armor that made him look more machine than human. Beside him, Dr. Yuna appeared smaller but no less changed. Her eyes glowed with the same unnatural light as his. The final void-high hive was hidden in the galactic core, the archive explained as images of massive shadow creatures filled the screens. They had consumed 3,000 star systems and were preparing to devour everything else. Conventional weapons were useless. The creatures existed partially outside normal reality. Soyeon leaned forward, studying the data. How could they be stopped if they were not fully in our dimension? Dr. Yuna developed the reset protocol, the archive continued, a quantum weapon that would collapse the barriers between dimensions, forcing the void hive fully into our reality where they could be destroyed. But the process would also erase all quantum traces of their existence. The hologram showed Dr. Yuna working frantically at a massive machine that filled half the chamber. Around her, human technicians moved with inhuman speed and precision, their modified bodies allowing them to work in ways normal humans could not. The weapon required precise calibration, the archive explained. Remove too little and some void hive would survive. Remove too much, and the quantum backlash could destroy the galaxy itself. Velthara watched the images with growing unease. If this is true, why did our people remember humans as monsters? Because the modification process changed more than just human biology, the archive said sadly. It altered their behavior as well. To fight creatures that existed outside morality, humans had to become beings that operated outside morality too. New images appeared showing human soldiers in action. They moved through void-high infected systems like living weapons, destroying everything in their path. They could not distinguish between infected beings and healthy ones because the shadow creatures could hide inside any living host. Your ancestors were forced to make terrible choices, the archive continued. Destroy entire populations to save them from infection. Burn worlds to prevent the spread. They became exactly what other species feared most because it was the only way to win. Minho felt sick as he watched human ships bombarding planets filled with civilians. They killed innocents. They killed the already doomed to save everyone else, the archive corrected. Every being the void high touched was lost forever. Human actions looked like genocide, but they were actually mercy killings. General Young-Ho's recorded voice echoed through the chamber. We have become the monsters we fought to protect everyone from. When this is over, the galaxy must be allowed to forget what we became. They must remember only peace. Dr. Yunha's image activated the final sequence of the reset protocol. The machine around her began to glow with impossible light. The quantum erasure will remove all traces of void-high existence from reality, but the backlash will scatter humanity across time and space. We will lose everything we are to save everyone we love. They knew, whispered Elder Tomax. They knew the price and paid it anyway. The screens showed the moment of activation. Light erupted from the machine, spreading outward at impossible speed. Where it touched, the shadow creatures simply ceased to exist. But the same light that destroyed them also began erasing the memories of everyone who had fought them. The reset protocol worked perfectly, the archive said. Every void high was removed from reality, but the quantum feedback sent humanity backward through time to their original world, stripping away all their technology and memories of their advanced civilization. Soyeon was studying the genetic data that scrolled past on her screen. The modifications they made to themselves. Do they still exist in modern humans? Dormant, but present, the archive confirmed. The genetic changes that made humans immune to void-high infection are still there waiting to be activated. Your ancestors designed it that way in case the shadow creatures ever returned. As if summoned by those words, new alarms began ringing throughout the chamber. The archive's voice became urgent. Warning. Quantum instability detected in multiple sectors. The erasure barriers are weakening. A star map appeared showing dozens of red dots scattered across the galaxy. Each dot was pulsing with a dark energy that seemed to absorb light rather than emit it. The Void High are returning, the archive announced. After 50,000 years, the reset protocol is failing. The shadow creatures are beginning to seep back into reality. Minho felt his blood turn cold. How much time do we have? Unknown. The process is accelerating. Based on current patterns, full manifestation will occur within standard months, not years. Velthara was transmitting everything to her fleet. We must warn the galaxy immediately. All species must prepare for war. With what? Elder Tomax asked grimly. Our current technology cannot fight creatures that exist outside normal reality. Only the ancient human modifications could make beings capable of battling them. The archive's tone became almost hopeful. There is another option. Dr. Yunha designed a secondary protocol. Instead of erasing the Void High again, it would spread the human immunity to other species willing to accept it. Willing to become like the ancient humans? Soyon asked. Not exactly. The process has been refined. The modifications would grant immunity without the psychological changes that made ancient humans so frightening to other species. Minho stared at the screens showing the approaching darkness. But someone would have to activate this protocol. Someone would have to make the same choice our ancestors made. Yes, the archive agreed. And that someone would need to carry the original genetic modifications. Only a direct descendant of the ancient human warriors could survive the process. As the implications sank in, Minho realized that humanity's role in the galaxy was far from over. Their ancestors had saved everyone once through sacrifice and had been forgotten for it. Now their descendants would have to choose whether to do the same thing again. But this time, there might be a chance to be remembered not as monsters, but as heroes. The archive continued displaying data about the returning threat, but Minho was already thinking ahead. The galaxy would need to be warned. The ancient human technology would need to be studied and understood. And most importantly, someone would need to step forward and accept the terrible responsibility that came with humanity's unique heritage. Can you contact our ship? He asked the archive. Yes. All communication systems are operational. Send everything to Captain Taman. Tell him to alert Earth and the Galactic Council. The Void High are coming back, and this time we need to be ready. As messages raced across the galaxy carrying news of the returning threat, Minho looked around the ancient chamber where humanity's greatest heroes had made their final choice. Soon, their descendants would face the same decision. He just hoped they would prove worthy of their legacy. Dr. Jamin had been studying the strange energy readings for 3 days when he finally understood what he was seeing. His hands shook as he ran the calculations again, hoping he was wrong. The numbers were clear, and they were terrifying. Captain Taman, he said into his communicator, you need to see this immediately. The bridge of the Taiguk was busier than it had ever been. After the discovery on Kithara, ships from across the galaxy had gathered to study the ancient human ruins. Now Yemen's readings were confirming their worst fears. Taman looked at the data on Yemen's screen. Explain this to me in simple terms. The dead systems the archive warned us about, Jamin said, pointing to his star charts. They're not dead anymore. Something is stirring in the quantum foam around those stars. The same energy signature we found in the Void High records. How many systems? 47 so far, and the number is growing. The pattern is accelerating. Whatever the reset protocol did to hide the Void High, it's breaking down fast. Across the galaxy, other ships were reporting similar findings. The Centauri fleet had detected strange shadows moving through space near the Kepler system. The Hive reported that entire sectors were going silent, their communication signals simply disappearing. On Earth, Hieri was experiencing changes she could not explain. Ever since returning from Kithara, she had been having vivid dreams of battles in space. She would wake up knowing things about alien technology that she had never studied. Her medical scans showed unusual brain activity in regions that normally remained dormant. Dr. Hyeri, her assistant, called from across the laboratory. "Your genetic analysis results are ready." Hyeri looked at the data and gasped. Her DNA was changing. New sequences were activating, sections that had been dormant her entire life. According to the computer, these changes matched the genetic modifications found in the ancient human warriors. She was not the only one. Reports were coming in from humans across the galaxy. People who had been exposed to the ancient technology on Kithara were showing similar changes. Their bodies were preparing for something their minds did not yet understand. Doyun was working in the engine room of the Taiguk when it happened. He was trying to repair a damaged power coupling when suddenly he understood exactly how it worked. Not just the human technology, but the alien systems too. He could see the energy patterns flowing through the ship's systems as clearly as if they were visible. "That's not possible," he whispered. But his hands were already moving, making adjustments to the engines that should have required weeks of study to understand. The first Void High attack came without warning. The Centauri colony on Prima Centauri simply went dark. One moment their communication signals were normal, the next there was nothing but silence. Admiral Krethvar led a rescue fleet to investigate. What they found was worse than any nightmare. The planet was still there, but it was wrong. The surface appeared to be covered in a black substance that moved like liquid, but cast no reflection. "Scanning the surface," reported his science officer. "The readings are impossible, sir. The matter down there is partially phased out of our reality." As they watched, the black substance began to rise from the planet's surface like smoke. But, when it touched their scanning beams, the instrument simply stopped working. Not broken, but as if they had forgotten how to function. "All ships retreat immediately," Admiral Krethvar ordered, but it was too late for one of his vessels. The shadow touched its hull and the ship began to fade. Not destroyed, but becoming less real with each passing second. "Help us," came the panicked transmission from the fading ship. "We're forgetting how to exist." The vessel vanished completely, leaving no trace that it had ever been there. Even the rescue fleet's computers erased all records of it automatically. Word of the attack spread quickly. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions as more reports came in. The Void High were not returning gradually. They were manifesting everywhere at once, as if 50,000 years of imprisonment had compressed into a single moment of release. On Kithara, the archive was working desperately to provide information to the gathering fleets, but even it was struggling to process what was happening. "The quantum barriers are collapsing faster than predicted," it reported to Minho and his team. "The Void High are not just returning to our reality. They are remembering how to exist here. Their knowledge of our weaknesses is also coming back." Elder Tomac studied the data with growing alarm. "How do we fight an enemy that can erase our weapons simply by touching them?" "The same way humanity did before," the archive replied. "With beings who exist partially outside normal reality themselves." Velthara had been listening to the reports with growing fear. Her people were brave warriors, but they had no defense against creatures that could make them forget they existed. "The genetic modifications," she said suddenly. "The ones that made ancient humans immune. Can they be given to other species?" "Theoretically, yes," the archive confirmed. Dr. Yunha's secondary protocol was designed for exactly this purpose, but it requires a human with active modifications to serve as a genetic template. All eyes turned to the humans in the room. Minho, Soyan, and the others who had been exposed to the ancient technology were already showing signs of change. Their DNA was awakening to patterns laid down 50,000 years ago. "What would it do to us?" Soyan asked quietly. "You would become similar to your ancestors," the archive explained. "Immune to Void High influence, capable of fighting them on equal terms. But the transformation would change you permanently. You would no longer be entirely human as you understand the term." Minho thought of the images they had seen of ancient human warriors, beings of terrifying power who had sacrificed their humanity to save everyone else. "And the others? The aliens who accept the modifications?" they would gain immunity, but retain more of their original nature. The process has been refined to minimize psychological changes for non-humans. Before anyone could respond, new alarms rang through the chamber. On the screens, they could see void-high manifestations appearing in dozens of systems simultaneously. The shadow creatures were spreading faster than anyone had thought possible. "We need to make a decision," Minho said, looking at his fellow humans. "The galaxy is not ready for this war. Without the modifications, entire species will be erased from existence." Hieri's voice came over the communication system from the Har. "Taeguk. Minho, the genetic changes are accelerating in all of us. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide quickly." Soyeon nodded grimly. "Our ancestors gave up everything to save the galaxy once. They became monsters so that others could live in peace. Are we willing to do the same?" As the void-high spread, across more star systems, erasing entire civilizations from reality, the descendants of humanity's greatest heroes faced the same terrible choice their ancestors had made: become something inhuman to fight the truly inhuman, or watch the galaxy fall to creatures that existed beyond all morality and reason. The age of peace was ending. The war for reality itself was about to begin again.